Hello. So what we're going to work through today is setting up a farm when it is new in the platform. So this is when a farm is essentially already set up and receiving satellite measurements. What we've got here is the dashboard of this farm. Now, first thing I'd like to check is the herd, so the herd setup. So we can see that there are two herds here. So if we open up the grazing to-do list, we can see that there are 2 feed slots and 1 feed slot for this herd. So if we come along to herds, view all, we can see, yep, feeds per day 2 and 1. So if we click on this milkers, it'll take us to the farm herds milkers. So if you ever get lost, you can always just look at the breadcrumbs, which you can use to navigate. So if I click on herds, it will take me back to the herds index. If I click on farm, it'll take us back to the farm dashboard, just like that. So let's go back to herds view, or alternatively, we can skip ahead and go straight to the milkers. Now the program is built so it's centered or centralized around the map, and that the left toolbar, which is where a lot of actions are taken, it looks like you're on the same screen. So it's built to be a one-page app. So if I go back to herds, to farm, we can see that all that changed was this panel over here, and nothing else changed. So now let's look at the herd. So in version 2 at the moment, it is lacking all the ruminant nutritional information that can be found in version 1. So that is being migrated over as we speak. It's quite a massive task, so just bear with us while we work through that. So we can see current size, average herd weight. We can go down and see feed slots. We see day feed, 5 a.m., 4:59 p.m., 5 p.m., 4:59 a.m. Yep, that's great. So day one. So that would be 50%. So it's important to not overlap the times between feed slots, and that is perfect as it is right now. That should have saved. 50/50. Well, it saved. So when in doubt, what you can do on Windows, it is Control-Shift-R, or on Mac in Chrome, it is Command-Shift-R. Now what this does is it force reloads the cache and brings out all the data from the server, so then we know that we're operating with the most recent data that's hit the server. Targets per day. So this is the nutritional stuff. This can be edited in version 1. Now to access version 1, you can come up here to herds. Now this will take us to the version 1 herds, where if we click on this row for this one for the milkers, we can then come in here and we can set, say, the peak liters, fat, protein percentage, and the current liters and fat and protein percentage, and that will then flow through into the energy and protein requirements of this herd. So wherever you see in the system, and this is V1 and V2, a slightly grayed out background, that means that number can be overridden with your own number. So if you wanted to put in 7.2 there, you can. And then you could press update herd and it saves. But if you didn't want that number there, you can just simply delete it. And because it's a grayed out placeholder number, you know that number will come back. So we'll just revert it back to how it was. Now there are some things in version 1, like namely if you want to do nutrition stuff, that you can't currently do in V2, but that's as we've discussed, is being migrated across. So let's go back to version 2, because this is where we like to spend most of our time, because it's quicker and it is the future. So now we've looked at the herds, we know that we've got herds that we can
Just look
graze.
at this
Dry herd here, dry cows, feed slots. So if you move your dry cows 2 times a day, then you would make a night grazing maybe, and so to do that you would add a feed slot and then put the name in and whatnot. For now, I'm just going to change this to 100% because the time will determine what the percentage of the pasture to allocate on that feed slot will be, unless you override it with the amount. So we'll save all. And again, there's just that it's saved. Okay, so back to the farm dashboard. As I said, up in this breadcrumb here, that's a quick way to get back. Now we can see the grazing to-do list, and if I want to choose a feed for the milkers, what I'll do is click on the day feed. Now this opens up a grazing's new, so a new grazing. Now I can come over here and I can select that paddock to graze, press select, and then save. And then that takes me back to the dashboard, ready to put in the next grazing. So now I can come along here and I can click this paddock, click that feed slot. I know I'm in new grazings, so I can come over here and pick another paddock, select, and then I can press save all. So now we've got 1 herd out of 2 have grazing records for this day. So now if I wanted to pick one for the dry cows, there are no paddocks currently assigned to the dry cows, but that doesn't matter. I can say that they're currently living down in that back corner, and I can press save all. So now we can see that both herds have a grazing record. Now the important piece with the grazing records, and why we make it front and center with the grazing to-do list, is because it makes such a big impact on how good your remote pasture measurements will be. So one of the key aspects is keeping the grazing records up to date. So if we look at your feed wedge, we'll notice that it looks quite flat. Flat through here. Now that is, normally it doesn't usually get this high without grazing records. Normally it tops out around 2500. So normally the feed wedge will look flat like this without grazing records, and then things like fertilizer records and whatnot. So if we can start getting the grazing records in, you'll notice that the feed wedge will start to sharpen up and it will start to really hit the post-grazing residual, and it'll start to hit the pre-grazing pasture cover, so whether that's above 3000 or just below currently in real life. So just to go over that again, we need to enter the grazings in to get the best pasture measurements. It's part of the puzzle, or it's a piece of the puzzle to getting the best satellite pasture measurements. Now, if we're to look at this dashboard a bit further, we can see that under pasture we have, or under all of these tabs, we have a summary, and they give us a quick indication without having to open up the summary to see what is going on. So under pasture we can see the latest measurement gave us 2607 across the farm. Now, as I explained, I'd expect that's probably a bit inflated, given that the model isn't hitting those post-grazing residuals due to no grazings. We can see the forecast daily pasture grown. Now, this is the same for all 3 of these, is that the daily pasture grown is looking out over the next 2 weeks and comparing it to the previous 3 weeks. So it's a good indication. So you might think latest pasture reading has jumped, or you might say latest growth rate reading has jumped 16. So it's starting to take off. But the forecast daily growth rate is saying it's maintaining, so don't get too excited. And that's probably the most safe bet at this time of year. So if we unfold the pasture, we can see tonnage of dry matter per hectare per day grown, and then we can come across here and we can see things like the pasture cover. Now, because there are no grazings, what we're seeing is this phenomenon where the farm is just growing into the future. So you can see the forecast. So without grazings, the model is predicting that these paddocks will just continue to grow, because it's not a magic ball. It's not a glass magic ball or a ball that looks into the future. So it does need some help. So if we come down to growth rate, so this is where we can see the last 7 days versus the next 7 days. So even though, as we discussed, the growth rate over the next 7 days is increasing as compared to the last 7 days, then we know that the longer term trend, even though it's a short period that we're talking about, 2 weeks and 3 weeks, is maintaining. So it's a really good indication of not getting too excited and not opening up the round and things like that. So it just makes sure that you keep that buffer up your sleeve, so then the grazing decisions aren't too aggressive, especially at this time of year when you need to be really careful with the decreasing growth rates. So if we come across to the growth rate chart, we can access these by clicking on these arrows here. If we come across to this chart, we can break this down into weekly and also see the daily growth rates. Now we've got a bit of a forecast happening over here. Today, the date today is the 18th, so 18th of May. So we can see that that's where the forecast, the 2-week forecast starts, and then this is another 2-week forecast to take it out to a month that we've been working on. So you can see each day the paddocks on your farm are measured, so for a growth rate and for the pasture cover, and then they are compiled on the farm dashboard, which is seen here, to give you the farm average pasture cover and growth rate. Now if we come down to leaf emergence, unlike increase in pasturing growth rate, that's a bad thing with leaf emergence, because we really want the leaf emergence to be days to leaf emergence decreasing, so it means that we can, the plant's growing quicker and we can really stoke the pasture into the cows. So not much is changing here, and that's as expected with leaf emergence. It's a slow change. So if we come across to the growth to the chart, we can actually see this on a weekly as well as a daily basis. And all these charts, what they do, and including the feed wedge and things like that, they really help feed subconsciously into your brain what is happening. I mean, everyone knows that we're in autumn, growth rates are slowing, we're about to hit winter. If you haven't slowed your round down to account for leaf emergence and pasture cover and decreasing growth rates and things like that, then you're going to be in a world of trouble. But everyone knows it, so everyone knows that, yet making those decisions quicker than what your eye will tell you is the key here, and making those decisions using less mental power is what we're trying to achieve here. So if you can look at this and just subconsciously soak in the information and then go about your day, you're winning in my eyes. So that's what this farm dashboard is about. It's about giving you that information that can relieve the burden, the mental decision-making burden, on how to actively manage your farm. We do have a weather panel here. I'm not going to go too much into that because you'd already have your own resources as well as this weather. If you have other sensors like on-farm sensors and things like that, we can also bring those into the platform and display them, such as Wild Eye. So if we come down to satellites and open up satellites, this is really cool. So it's currently showing, what's the time? It's 20 to 3 in the afternoon. So normally at 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. it looks like rush hour across Australia as the satellites are all flying over. So currently they're making their way across here, which would be roughly between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. where these satellites are now crossing. So they'll be crossing over here in a few hours when they start hitting our South African customers, and then they'll be then moving across to our Latin American customers and so forth. So if we come across here, we can see other charts. Like we can bring up overlays on the map to see things like, say, the pasture cover, growth rate, like fertilize. So if these had fertilization records, they would be shaded their different colors based on time. So if we come along to the fertilization timeline, you'd see the paddocks, but because this is a new account, there's no data to show, so that will grow over time. What else we can see is the imagery. So if we come up here to the readings page, we can get a deeper dive into the pasture readings. So now this is a really important piece. Here you can see that there is satellite imagery. Here you can see that there isn't satellite imagery. So I'll just close the feed wedge for now by clicking on this reports tab. So when there isn't satellite imagery, that's when the cloudy days model kicks in. Now this is a crucial point of the program with the satellite pasture measurements, is that if you don't have grazing entries, as we've discovered, because it's a new account, then the cloudy days model won't have anything to tell it what is happening on the ground. So the last satellite measurement we had here was 3 days ago on the 15th, and then the cloudy days model comes along, it works 24 hours behind us, just to give you a chance to get those grazing records in, and it gives an estimated pasture growth rate and pasture cover based on the most recent weather or local weather. So in a way, it's more accurate, or generally more accurate, than using the pasture growth rate that was measured from last week to forecast out the paddocks over the next week, because it's a real-time, up-to-date model of what is happening, rather than using that other model that I just mentioned, where you forecast out the paddocks, how much has grown on each paddock based on the previous measurements, which are generally based on the previous weather conditions, aren't they? So it's quite an exciting model, but it does trick people. So it's important to just understand that the cloudy days model works best when the information is kept up to date. So if we go back in time here, rather than going to the overlay now, which is here, and clicking the different satellite indices, we can just see on the satellite imagery here, and then we can flick through the different indices, which all give a slightly different story. So we can get a better understanding of what is happening on the ground. If you'd like to edit any of these, that is great. We come down here and click Edit Details, and then we can change these numbers. And much like the animal nutrition that we talked through, if we change these numbers, then they update they act as a training event for the satellite pasture measurement, which is really cool. So if this happened, if you drove past this paddock and you're like, oh, that looks more like 2700, and you walked through the paddock with a plate meter or something like that and measured it just to check, and it said, oh, no, I was wrong, it's actually 2800, then you could actually type in 2800 in there, come down here, press save, and then that would save your measurement, but also tell the program about this paddock is 2800. Now, if you notice that again in the future, that there was another 250 kilo discrepancy between what you wanted the model to tell you and what the model did tell you for that paddock, and you changed it, it gets stronger and stronger at learning each individual paddock on your farm. Now, it's not compulsory. The majority of our customers do not edit satellite measurements. They're happy with the measurements as they are. So I would like to see more people editing and adding their own manual measurements, but that's just me. The trick here is to inform you that it is a possibility, but it's not compulsory. So it's up to you how excited and detailed you want to get with the information. So I'll come down here and press cancel. Something I forgot to talk about on the reports is this feed wedge there's a lot of options on there. So we can actually put it relative to area. So we can see more like, total feed available, and that's generally more feed available is generally based on, how big the paddock is. So we can show these this feed wedge in many different ways, which is really cool. And it's just another way of getting you to subconsciously think about what is happening on your farm, and is it happening is the model telling you what you're seeing on the farm as well. So if we come up here to the farm settings, we can come along here to monthly targets. Now this is where you can change the pre-grazing pasture cover target and the post-grazing pasture cover target. Now why this is important is because we can actually change these targets. So then for each, we can change it once up here, and that will override everything, or we can change it on an individual basis. Now what's cool about this is you can actually set the pasture targets to be different for each month. So if you come through here and you say, oh well, in the middle of July we can afford to graze the paddock out at 3150, and then August it's 3050, and then by September we're down to 2900 because the grass is going reproductive and we just want to graze really quickly. Then this will, if I save that, actually in V2 we cannot see it, I don't think. No. So what will happen with this target line is that it will change each month automatically. So that's another way of automating what you're trying to do on farm and what the information is telling you here. So if we knew that this feed wedge was true down here because the grazings and FERT entries and whatnot were put in, then we could say, oh, we've got this massive surplus coming through here, yet the target cover line is down here. So we know we can afford to start silaging these paddocks or whatever the strategy is, especially if you're going into spring. So if we come back to monthly targets, I might just remove these and let you can play with those targets yourself. So that's a really, I guess I was going to say, brief overview of herds grazing, looking what to look out for and looking over the program. There's a lot more in it. obviously there's heaps more in it, and we're building more into it, and we're migrating more across from version 1 into version 2. So it's a pretty exciting time to join the program, and you have the opportunity to help shape this program with your feedback being loud. So, which is really cool. It's what we want. We want our customers to be giving us feedback on how they use the program, what they'd like to see in the program, and those sort of things. But also giving us feedback with bugs, or enhancements, or anything. And yeah, looking forward to working with you. So hopefully this video has helped. Thank you.